A normal afternoon in the city, but these weird, pale blob creatures are just standing around in the middle of the street. People aren't even scared. This guy is actually getting right in one's personal space to take a photo. Everyone's just standing around gossiping, trying to figure out if it's some kind of elaborate costume or a real thing. The guy keeps snapping away, totally oblivious to the fact that he's poking a giant, faceless entity. He leans in for the ultimate selfie, giving the camera a big, confident smile. The flash goes off, capturing what he thinks is going to be his most viral post yet. He checks the screen and admires his work, thinking he got the perfect shot. He's so focused on his phone that he doesn't notice the creature behind him starting to change. Suddenly, the blob's skin begins to pulse and bubble like it's about to burst. The people nearby freak out and start shouting at him to get away from the thing. He looks up, confused by all the noise, but he's already out of time. A massive, fleshy arm erupts from the side of the creature and snatches him right off the pavement. In the blink of an eye, it punched a hole right through him, leaving a gruesome, bloody mess. The crowd loses it, screaming in terror as they realize this isn't a joke and start running for their lives. The creature just stands there, its new limb dripping with fresh blood as the street clears out. It slowly pulls the long, meaty appendage back into its main body. A dark, vertical slit opens up on its face, right where a nose should be. Then its entire chest splits open into a massive maw lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth. It hunches over and starts tearing into the man it just killed, right there on the sidewalk. The scene cuts away as the world starts descending into a nightmare. Somewhere else, Hayato's mother is carefully pouring out some liquid medicine for her son. She fills the spoon to the brim, her hands steady despite the chaos happening outside. She gently wakes up her son, Hayato, telling him it's time for his daily dose. Hayato, looking pale and exhausted, opens his mouth and takes the medicine without a fight. He winces and sticks his tongue out, complaining that the stuff tastes absolutely disgusting. His mother checks his forehead for a fever, relieved that he seems a little cooler than before. She tells him they have to postpone their trip to the amusement park so they can go to the hospital for a checkup. Hayato tries to act tough, insisting he's feeling great and can definitely handle a roller coaster. She won't hear it, reminding him that his health is the only thing that actually matters. She promises they can go next week instead, saying the time will pass by in a flash. He gives in and closes his eyes, sounding disappointed but too tired to keep arguing. She pets his hair and tells him to go back to sleep so he can get his strength back. Hayato drifts off, still looking sickly with deep circles under his eyes. He falls into a deep sleep, completely unaware of the threat growing in the city. His mother watches him for a moment, her face full of concern for her son's future. She tucks the blanket around his shoulders to make sure he stays warm. She picks up the remote and points it at the TV, looking for some news. She clicks it on, hoping to find out what's going on in the world outside their door. The screen shows the monsters rampaging, with reporters desperately warning everyone to stay indoors. But wanting to keep things quiet for her son, she had already muted the TV, so she had no idea what was being broadcast. A sharp, blinding light streaked across the screen before the TV abruptly died. The next morning, she brings Hayato to a massive general hospital, hopping for answers. As they walk inside, she looks around at the packed lobby and realizes the situation is much worse than she thought. The hospital lobby is packed, with everyone looking exhausted and on edge. Hayato's mother takes a ticket from the machine, wondering why it's so much more crowded than usual. She leads Hayato through the hall, regretting that they didn't get here earlier to beat the rush. She finds a spot for them to wait, but the atmosphere in the room is heavy with anxiety. On a nearby monitor, the news report confirms that the death toll from the monster attacks has already reached 80. A grainy image of one of the creatures appears on screen, and everyone watches in stunned silence. Everyone in the waiting room is glued to the screen, unable to believe what they're seeing. Hayato's mother watches with a sinking feeling as the reporter says the police are still trying to hunt the thing down. A health expert on the news explains that the outbreak might be caused by a completely new, unknown virus. He warns that while the early symptoms seem like a cold, The body then undergoes a violent transformation. Hearing this, an old man at the reception desk starts losing his mind, screaming at the staff to treat him immediately. He's convinced he has the symptoms, but the nurse tells him they're already completely overwhelmed. The man gets aggressive, asking who's going to take responsibility if he turns into a monster right then and there. Behind him, a young man suddenly collapses to his knees, his hands starting to warp and change. Dark, shadowy energy begins to roll off his body as he doubles over in pain. Hayato's mother senses something is wrong and turns around, her face going pale. She stares in horror as the man's body begins to swell and rip through his clothes. She lets out a gasp, realizing the nightmare from the news is happening right in front of her. The man is gone, replaced by a massive muscular beast with glowing red eyes and a row of jagged teeth. The monster lets out a deafening roar as everyone in the lobby starts screaming and running for the exits. Panic completely takes over the hospital as the beast towers over the terrified crowd. It lunges forward, and the people nearby realize it's coming straight for them. With one violent swing of its massive arm, it strikes a man, sending blood spraying across the room. People scramble over each other, begging for someone to help them as the creature continues its rampage. The monster lets out another blood-curdling scream, its mouth wide open in a predatory grin. Hayato and his mother manage to make it to their car and speed away, leaving the carnage behind. She grips the steering wheel tight, but the road ahead is a complete mess of traffic and abandoned vehicles. She's breathing hard, her eyes darting around as she tries to find a clear path through the chaos. Hayato is wide-eyed in the passenger seat, terrified and asking his mom what that thing at the hospital was. She tells him she doesn't know, but her only focus is getting him somewhere safe. Suddenly, the car in front of them slams on its brakes, tires screeching against the asphalt. There's no time to react. Everything becomes a blur as they brace for the impact. The force of the crash throws them forward, and the world goes silent for a split second. Their car plows right into the back of the red sedan, smoke starting to billow from under the hood. His mother winces and grabs her head, trying to shake off the shock of the collision. She immediately turns to the back seat, checking on Hayato to see if he's hurt. He's dazed and in pain, and she desperately reaches for the ignition to get them moving again. She slams the engine start button over and over, but the car is completely dead. She panics, realizing they're trapped in the middle of the road with no way to escape. Outside, the driver of the other car stumbles out, screaming at the top of his lungs as he sees something approaching. People are running past their car in a blind panic, fleeing from a new threat coming down the street. His mother looks through the window, her voice trembling as she realizes they're right in the path of another monster. A towering, pale creature with massive drills for arms looms over the street, its presence cold and menacing. The tip of its organic drill scrapes against the asphalt, throwing sparks into the air with a harsh, screeching sound. It moves with a predatory grace, its glowing red eyes fixed on the victims trapped in the wreckage. The monster lets out a low, guttural growl, its jagged teeth baring in a savage, predatory grin. Hayato's mother is frozen in terror, her breath hitching as she looks up at the nightmare standing before her. Hayato looks out from the car, his voice trembling as he asks his mother what she's doing. "Hurry and get back in the car," he pleads, his eyes wide with terror as he sees the monster closing in. His mother lets out a sharp gasp, the sheer weight of the monster's gaze pinning her to the spot. The beast stares her down, its red eyes pulsing with a hunger for destruction. She stops, a sudden, desperate resolve washing over her face despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Her expression turns solemn as she makes a choice, knowing this might be the last time she ever sees her son. "I love you, Hayato," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the sirens in the distance. Hayato stares at her in confusion and shock, not understanding why she's speaking like it's a final goodbye. "Hayato, run!" she suddenly yells, turning and sprinting away to draw the monster's attention. "Mom, where are you going?" he screams, paralyzed with horror as he watches her run toward danger. The drill monster lets out a growl, its body tensing as it prepares to strike the target that has just presented itself. A sickening splash of blood fills the air as the monster's drill pierces right through her. "Mom!" Hayato cries out, a scream of pure agony stuck in his throat as he witnesses the unthinkable. "Hayato, hurry and run!" She screams out with her last bit of strength, her only thought still on his safety. She lies motionless on the pavement, and Hayato can only stare in a daze, unable to process the tragedy. Mom," he whimpers, his body trembling uncontrollably as he cowers behind the wrecked car. The creature lets out a terrifying roar, its mouth wide and its predatory eyes fixed on the young boy. It lunges forward, and the scene is a blur of red as it strikes out with its massive, blood-stained drill. "Mom!" Hayato screams again, his world collapsing into a nightmare of pain and loss. "Get away from my mom!" he yells with a sudden burst of frantic courage, charging at the beast. His mother, barely conscious, cries out for him to leave her and save himself while he still can. "No, I'm not leaving Mom behind," he shouts back, his face a mask of grief and stubborn defiance. The monster's red eye fills the frame, cold and unfeeling as it watches the boy's futile struggle. With a sudden, violent movement, the creature strikes again, as a series of drills erupt from its back, tearing through the air with a piercing screech. Hayato grunts in pain as the drill grazes his arm, sending blood spraying across his vision. He grinds his teeth, his face contorted in agony as he tries to stay on his feet. He lets out a guttural scream, his voice cracking under the weight of the physical and emotional trauma. Driven by sheer desperation, Hayato refuses to back down, biting down hard onto the monster's spine. Hayato is thrown backward by the force of the blow, his body skidding across the rough pavement. He gasps for air, blood pooling around his shoulders, as he struggles to move even an inch. The drill monster towers over him, its massive frame blotting out the sky as it prepares for the final strike. It raises its drill high and plunges it down, sending a massive eruption of blood into the air. "Hayato!" his mother screams, witnessing the brutal attack on her son with her final breaths. Hayato lets out one last, pained gasp, his eyes dulling as the life begins to drain from his body. He coughs up blood, his vision blurring as he looks over at his mother lying just a few feet away. She lies in a growing pool of blood, her voice a faint whisper of his name as the darkness closes in. The monster's face looms close, its glowing red eyes and rows of sharp teeth the last thing Hayato sees. Hayato's mother lies still, her eyes devoid of life as a pool of blood spreads beneath her. A wet, tearing sound echoes through the air, followed by a splash of red that signals the monster's gruesome intent. The creature looms over her lifeless form, its long limbs and twisted body casting a dark shadow on the asphalt. Hayato, barely clinging to consciousness and covered in his own blood, looks on in desperation. "Don't eat her!" he croaks out. A strange, visceral sensation pulses through his body, like a fire igniting in his very core. His eyes snap open, the pupils narrowing as a brilliant yellow light begins to glow from within them. "Stop!" he gasps, his voice sounding deeper and more primal as the air around him begins to crackle. "Don't eat my mom!" he screams, the sound echoing with a powerful resonance as something inhuman begins to awaken within him. "Don't eat her!" he bellows again, a surge of energy erupting from him and shattering the ground beneath him. "Ah!" he lets out a soul-piercing cry as his body undergoes a terrifying transformation, his teeth sharpening into jagged rows. With a burst of blinding speed, he lunges at the creature, his fist glowing with intense electrical energy. He strikes the drill monster with a force that sends shockwaves through the street, his movements a blur of raw power. Crackling bolts of blue lightning wrap around his arms, his expression one of pure, unrestrained rage. The creature shrieks in pain as Hayato's strike connects, the impact tearing through its thick, pale skin. Hayato's roar is no longer that of a human boy, but of something far more dangerous. A massive explosion of light and energy consumes the scene, the air itself vibrating from the sheer magnitude of the power. Hayato's hand shifts into a jagged, thorny drill, surging with a powerful, raging bolt of lightning. A blinding flash of white energy erupts as the force of the collision obliterates everything else from view. The sky is bright and clear today. It's a perfect day at the beach, with the sun reflecting off the water. Young Hayato and his mother are taking a peaceful stroll along the shore. The kid looks genuinely happy, enjoying every second of it. His mom points up at a seagull soaring through the air. He watches it fly, wondering if he can feed it some treats. She smiles and asks where he'd like to go next. Hayato tells her his dream is to ride an airplane to some place far away. Then he stops and asks what her dream is. His mother just smiles, looking completely at peace. For her, this right here is exactly what she wished for. She says that nothing is more important to her than his happiness. Hayato is a bit stunned by that answer. She takes his hand and leads him back to go get those treats. They walk off into the distance, leaving a trail of footprints behind them. Suddenly, the peace is shattered by the flashing lights of a siren. Tactical teams arrive on the scene, reporting that one of the creatures has been taken down. From above, the drill monster is a mangled mess of black ichor, lying near the body of Hayato's mother. Before the officers can open fire again, the team leader screams for them to wait. The rest of the squad is confused since they were given shoot-to-kill orders. But the leader sees something that stops him in his tracks. In the middle of the carnage, a small, white-haired figure is hunched over the body of his mother. She's gone, having given everything to make sure he survived. Hayato is weeping, his eyes glowing yellow as the grief completely takes over. 7 years pass after that tragic day. Now the Security and Safety Agency is holding evaluations for its newest batch of recruits. Young men and women are out on the field, pushing their bodies to the limit. High above them, the evaluators watch every move from the balcony. The team leader, now an instructor, calls out for the next group to step up. Among them is a silver-haired recruit, focused and ready to go. The whistle blows, and the trainees sprint across the grass. The instructor stops for a second, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. He stares at the silver-haired kid, certain that they've crossed paths before. The recruit keeps running, his breathing heavy as he pushes through the exhaustion. It's Hayato, grown up, and finally ready to face the monsters that took everything from him. The test proctor calls for the adapted body candidates to step forward. Hayato Amagi is the first to answer, looking a bit out of place with those yellow eyes. Daiki Ishihara steps up next, full of energy and way too excited for a government evaluation. Then there's Kenichi Takebana, who just gives a stoic, business-like response. The test is simple. Destroy as many targets as possible, starting from the left. Up in the observation deck, the researchers note how young this batch of candidates is. The proctor warns them that the third target is made of high-grade, bulletproof material. But before they can even begin, a massive explosion rocks the city right next to the facility. A messenger rushes in with an emergency report. A variant has been spotted in the area. Operations are suspended immediately, and the researchers are told to leave. The proctor orders everyone to evacuate and head home for their own safety. He shouts that they'll contact the 3 adapted bodies later to reschedule the test. Daiki groans, annoyed that they came all this way just to be sent back. He slings an arm around Hayato, suggesting they go check out the monster themselves. Kenichi shoulders past them, telling them to stay out of his way. Daiki's mood shifts instantly, clearly annoyed by the guy acting so high and mighty. Suddenly 2 monsters, the beast and boxer variants, hop right onto the sports field. Instead of running, Daiki looks like he's finally found something worth smiling about. The researcher, Yuki, screams for everyone to get inside the building immediately. The beast variant doesn't wait around, lunging straight for the personnel. At this point, the proctor realized there was no escape. He cursed under his breath, squared his shoulders, and prepared to go all in against the monster. He manages to land a solid punch right in the middle of the creature's chest. His partner watches from the sidelines, desperately calling for backup. But the boxer variant is already winding up its massive, bulbous arms. The proctor barely had time to realize the shadow looming over him. A heavy blow slams him straight into the turf with violent force. He ends up face-down in the grass, blood pooling around his head. The boxer variant celebrates the hit with a few casual hops. The field turns into a nightmare as the monsters loom over their first victim. While everyone else scrambles to escape, Hayato is frozen, unable to look away. His eyes are wide as the reality of the situation finally hits him. Elsewhere in the city, a mysterious hooded figure walks down a deserted street. He mutters to himself about how he told them not to go outside. He stops as an explosion lights up the skyline behind the buildings. This is the variant leader, and he's got shark teeth and glowing red eyes. The night is just starting, and he's clearly looking for something. He catches a scent on the wind and begins to track it. He moves with terrifying speed, his claws digging deep into the walls. He eventually finds the beast and boxer variants finishing off a meal in an alley. A creepy smile spreads across his face as he recognizes his own kind. The two monsters stop what they're doing and look up at him. They stare at the newcomer, sensing he's something much more dangerous than them. The variant leader stares down the monsters, asking if they even have the capacity to talk. He grabs a small, gray creature by the throat, wondering if it can even understand what he's saying. Nearby, the beast variant is busy tearing into a fresh kill. The leader gets no answer, looking completely unimpressed by his own kind. He picks up a severed foot and offers it to the small creature, asking if it wants a bite. He pulls his hood back, telling the mindless monsters to pay attention. With his eyes glowing red, he declares that he's the one in charge from now on. Over at the training field, the once peaceful facility has turned into a war zone. The staff can only watch from the balcony, paralyzed as they witness the slaughter below. The variant boxer is busy stomping on a fallen victim, while the beast stands guard. The researcher lies motionless in the grass, blood staining the green turf. The boxer variant lets out a strange hoot, celebrating its easy victory. It winds up its massive, bulbous arms for another crushing blow. But before it can connect, Daiki Ishihara steps in and blocks the strike with his metal bat. The force of the impact sends the boxer variant sliding backward across the field. The researchers are stunned. One of the applicants is actually standing his ground. Daiki grips his bat tight, looking like he's having the time of his life. He laughs in the monster's face, calling the block a perfect home run. The beast variant doesn't take the insult well and lunges straight for him. Kenichi Takebana intercepts, landing a heavy punch right in the creature's gut. He keeps a cold, stoic expression, showing absolutely no fear. The blow is powerful enough to send the beast skidding away. Hayato Amagi ignores the fight, focusing on dragging the wounded to safety. Daiki turns to Kenichi, annoyed that he stepped in and stole his prey. Kenichi doesn't bite, coldly reminding him that this isn't some game they're playing. Daiki just smirks, clearly not interested in a lecture. He tells Kenichi he's hated him since the second they met. But his trash talk is cut short as the variant boxer catches him with a brutal counterattack. The monster hoots in triumph as Daiki is sent flying. Kenichi yells at him, frustrated that he didn't take the threat seriously. He tried to rush in to help, but the red monster pinned his leg down. Daiki land Trairnem letter 1 EB7 TC letter 1 ECF, TI letter 1 EBF, and G va CH letter 1 A1M Vang V letter 1 ECD and G KH letter 1 AFP San. He hits the ground hard, realizing his arm has snapped from the force of the blow. Back on this side, Kenichi had already been pinned to the ground. Suddenly, a spiraling burst of blue energy shreds through the monster's neck. In a flash, the variant boxer is also torn apart by the same unstoppable force. Daiki watches from the ground, completely shell-shocked by what he just saw. Hayato stands up, his right arm now a massive, spinning energy drill. His hair has turned silver and his teeth are razor-sharp, his eyes glowing with yellow light. Daiki and Kenichi can only stare, unable to believe the power their friend is putting out. A researcher frantically reports over the radio that both variants were killed in an instant. Suddenly, a hand drops onto Hayato's shoulder from behind. The variant leader stands there, looking genuinely confused by what just happened to his monsters. Hayato Amagi freezes, feeling the weight of a hand on his shoulder as he wonders where this newcomer came from. He spins around, looking into the hooded figure's eyes and questioning if he's even looking at a human. The variant leader's face contorts with rage as he snarls, unable to believe Hayato would slaughter his own kind. Up on the balcony, the evaluators are in a panic. having never seen a mutant with Hayato's specific characteristics before. Hayato is completely lost, demanding to know what the hell the hooded man is talking about and what he really is. Before he can get an answer, the variant leader slams a heavy fist into Hayato's chest. The world blurs for Hayato as his head snaps back from the force of the sudden strike. The leader doesn't stop there, digging his claws into Hayato's chest and warning him that one more move will cost him his heart. He pulls Hayato close, sniffing him and nodding that he doesn't smell human, wondering if he's a traitor to their kind. With his hand still buried in Hayato's torso, the leader demands a straight answer. Hayato gasps for air, his hand gripping the leader's arm as he struggles to stay conscious. He looks the leader dead in the eye and identifies himself simply as a monster. He doesn't wait for a reply, swinging his blue energy drill in a wide arc to force the leader back. The variant leader moves with supernatural speed, ducking the spinning blade with ease. Hayato steadies himself, declaring that if his opponent is a mutant, then he's going to take him down. The leader just sneers, insulted that trash like Hayato thinks he stands even a remote chance of winning. The two clash in a blinding explosion of energy, as Hayato brings his drill down with everything he has. The impact sends shockwaves across the field, the air itself vibrating from the sheer force of their collision. The variant leader catches the spinning drill with his bare hands, the friction throwing sparks into the air. Hayato lets out a primal scream, pouring every ounce of his remaining strength into the attack. But the leader's power is overwhelming, and he shoves Hayato back with a single, effortless motion. Hayato hits the turf hard, sliding across the white lines of the sports field until he can catch his footing. He clutches his chest, blood soaking into his shirt as the physical toll of the awakening starts to catch up with him. Every breath is a struggle, but he keeps his eyes locked on the hooded predator standing across from him. The variant leader stands perfectly still, a dark void of blood where Hayato's drill managed to graze him. He looks down at his own wound, his expression shifting from anger to something much more dangerous. From a distance, Daiki calls out to his friend, worried that the drill boy is in over his head. Ignoring the humans, the variant leader slowly pulls his hood back, revealing his shock of messy red hair. He admits that Hayato isn't half bad for a beginner, and suggests they settle this with a fight to the death. He ignores the chaos of the facility around them, his focus narrowing entirely on the silver-haired boy. On the balcony, the evaluators are screaming orders into their radios, desperate to get control of the situation. The leader's ear twitches at the sound, his senses sharp enough to pick up every frantic word from the humans. He turns back to Hayato, a cold, predatory grin spreading across his face as he gives himself a time limit. Hayato can only stare in confusion, as the monster declares he'll finish the job in exactly 5 minutes. The leader explains that backup will arrive by then, and he has no intention of being caught. He looks at the wound in his chest, admitting to himself that against a power like Hayato's, he might actually die today. His eyes lock onto Hayato's with an intense, burning hunger for the upcoming slaughter. Hayato lunges forward with a snarl, refusing to be looked down on by someone so arrogant. The variant leader crouches low, his posture shifting into something far more animalistic and feral. His hands begin to pulse and warp, the flesh tearing as massive, red claws erupt from his fingertips. He strikes with a speed Hayato can't follow, a flurry of crimson slashes tearing through the air. Hayato is caught in the middle of the whirlwind, blood spraying as the leader's tearing bite finds its mark. Hayato Amagi buckles under the weight of the blow, clutching his mangled chest as a scream of pure agony escapes him. There's no time to recover as the variant leader lunges forward again, his eyes glowing with predatory intent. He strikes Hayato's drill arm with a series of blinding slashes, the metal screeching as sparks fly in every direction. The leader lands in a low crouch, his hands now fully transformed into horrific, multi-clawed appendages that drip with blood. With a sudden burst of speed, he delivered a devastating kick that shattered Hayato's defenses, sending blood spraying across the turf. The impact was brutal. The leader kept focusing his attacks on Hayato's wound, making it go from bad to worse. Hayato's vision swims as he gasps for air, his body reaching its absolute breaking point under the relentless assault. The variant leader flexes his monstrous, fleshy claws, the sound of tearing muscle filling the silence between strikes. He continued to plunge his hand into the open wound on Hayato's chest, a sickening squelch accompanying a spray of crimson blood. Hayato is sent tumbling backward, his body skipping across the grass like a stone across water. He crashes onto the turf and lies still, a massive pool of blood quickly forming around his shattered chest. His breaths come in ragged, wet gasps as he stares up at the sky, his strength fading into a cold numbness. Seeing his friend go down, Daiki Ishihara screams out in terror, his voice cracking with desperation. Driven by pure survival instinct, Hayato tries to push himself off the ground, his drill arm shaking violently as it grinds against the grass. He convulses, coughing up a thick spray of blood that coats his chin and the front of his torn shirt. A pair of boots appear in his field of vision, as the variant leader calmly strolls toward his fallen opponent. The leader stares down at the broken boy with an expression of profound disappointment, muttering that the fight is already over. He crouches down to Hayato's level, a cruel smirk playing on his lips as he promises to make the boy's final moments interesting. The variant leader's expression suddenly shifts to one of shock as he senses something unexpected from his prey. Daiki can see the killing intent radiating from the predator and yells a frantic warning to his friend. But seeing how badly injured he was, Kenichi told him to get out of there, knowing that staying would only mean certain death. The hooded monster blurs forward, his claws ready to shred anything in his path. He catches Kenichi right across the chest, blood spraying onto the grass. The monster doesn't let up, slamming another strike into his target. Kenichi grits his teeth, taking the full force of the blow without moving an inch. Daiki screams for them to get moving, his face twisted in panic as the situation spirals. Blood gushes from a deep gash on Kenichi's leg. His eyes are wide with shock, barely processing how fast this thing is. Daiki can't just watch anymore, he charges straight into the fight. He lets out a shout and goes for a flying kick, but the monster doesn't even flinch. The leader just smiles, finding the human's desperate attempt hilarious. Kenichi watches from the ground, battered and barely holding on. The monster turns back to him, his expression cold and predatory. He lunges at the two boys again, his movements too fast for them to track. Daiki takes a brutal hit to the arm, his red jacket shredding under the claws. The leader towers over them, mocking their pathetic attempts to survive. Kenichi forces himself to his feet, blood dripping from his chin as he refuses to stay down. He throws a punch, but the monster catches his arm with ease. The leader slashes him across the face, sending a fresh spray of blood into the air. Kenichi collapses, hacking up blood as his body finally reaches its limit. The monster watches him fall, admitting that the kid was tougher than he expected. Hayato is trembling, his monster side starting to surface as he glares through the pain. The leader looms over him, laughing at the fact that he can barely even stand. He decides he's done playing around and prepares to end it right here. With a quick bye, he lunges forward for the kill. Hayato stares him down, his teeth sharpening as he prepares for the worst. Suddenly, a boot slams down from above, pinning the monster's head to the turf. The leader's eyes go wide as his face is crushed into the dirt. Ryosuke Nakata looks down with a cold, bored expression, telling him to get lost. He doesn't wait for an answer, unleashing a massive shockwave from his foot. A huge explosion of energy rips through the field, clearing everything in its path. Hayato shields his eyes, stunned by the sheer power of the newcomer. The leader is blasted clear across the field and smashed into a concrete wall. He lies limp in the crater, completely out of the fight. Nakata stares at the wreckage, casually wondering if the thing is actually dead. More Public Safety Bureau members roll up in black transport vans. A motorcycle screeches to a halt as backup floods the area. Team leader Takagi Gu hops off his bike, looking around at the mess. Taniguchi Tomoya joins him, surprised that the fight is already over. Kazuma Nishimura draws his weapon, asking if the boss needs any help. Nakata just tells them to start checking for casualties and getting the survivors out. Chief Shiraishi walks up, nodding that things could have been way worse if they were any later. Nakata asks if the researcher, Yuki, is still alive. Nakata looks down at the defeated monster. His team suggests finishing it off, but he knows they have a bigger priority, catching Hayato before he gets away. A stranger appears in the frame with a sinister expression, muttering some cryptic words. Suddenly, a new threat emerges, a bloated green mutant with a massive, pulsing throat. It lets out a deafening roar from the rooftop, sending a chill through everyone still on the field. More of the creatures swarm the edge of the building, shrieking down at the chaos below. The public safety members look up in shock, realizing they're being surrounded by a whole pack of the things. High above the carnage, a muscular man with orange hair watches the scene unfold, debating whether they should get involved. His companion, a woman with piercing yellow eyes, decides it's time to move before things get even more complicated. Something massive suddenly drops from the sky. A giant green frog monster slams onto the training field, carrying two mysterious riders on its back. Kazuma and his orange-haired buddy look down at the chaos. Kazuma's already complaining that they're late and two of their kin have already been killed. On the grass nearby, the twisted remains of a variant lie abandoned. The orange ponytail guy doesn't seem to care much, just looking down with a casual "poor bastards" for the dead. The PSB team leader steps forward, demanding to know who the hell these people are. One of the officers looks toward Chief Shiraishi, waiting for a command from the elder chief. Chief Shiraishi barks at everyone to hold their positions as the giant monster looms over the field. The chief isn't backing down, shouting at the intruders to state their business. Kazuma just gives a creepy smile. He tells them there's no need to panic, they're only here to pick up their family. He points a finger into the crowd of stunned recruits. He specifies exactly who he wants, the spiky-haired Daiki and the silver-haired Hayato. The security team is baffled, their kin. Daiki isn't having it. He stands in front of Hayato, yelling that Drill is their comrade, not some monster's relative. Kazuma's expression goes cold and silent. For a second, everything goes quiet as a single leaf drifts through the air. Then Kazuma moves. He's a total blur as he lunges straight into the line of guards. He grabbed Hayato before anyone around them could even blink. He lifts the guard off his feet by the throat. Shadows fall over Kazuma's eyes as he leans in, telling the guy he smells different and asking which side he really belongs on. He's tired of the talking. He hates liars more than anything. Ryasuke jumps in with a flying kick, slamming his boot straight into Kazuma's face. The impact sends Kazuma skidding back across the turf. Kazuma looks more intrigued than hurt, while Ryasuke stands his ground, ready for round two. Kazuma blocks the next strike with one arm, his eyes locked on his opponent. He catches Ryasuke's leg mid-swing and throws him like a rag doll. With a bone-shattering slam, Kazuma craters Ryasuke into the dirt. The team leader shouts out in alarm as his man is taken down. He stares in shock, unable to believe how easily his best guy was just handled. Another officer calls out to the leader, the confidence of the squad starting to crumble. The team leader loses his cool and charges Kazuma himself. Kazuma doesn't even flinch. He just reaches out and catches the punch with one hand. He tosses the leader's arms aside like they're nothing. The leader is paralyzed. The sheer strength coming from this kid is on a whole different level. Kazuma followed up by face-planting another guard into the pavement. The rest of the squad stops hesitating and opens fire with their rifles. A wall of lead tears into Kazuma. He just stands there while the bullets riddle his clothes, looking completely unbothered by the gunfire. He actually starts smiling. From the back of the monster, the orange-haired companion crosses his arms, having waited for the real show to start. Kazuma Nishimura spots something moving fast under the grass and looks down in confusion. Before anyone can react, jagged spikes of ice erupt from the ground, impaling the officers where they stand. Ice spikes rip through the ground, freezing a recruit where he stands. The field is a graveyard of ice. Kazuma's orange-haired buddy stands over the frozen officers, watching them struggle. He looks down with a cold, almost bored expression, telling them they won't die, at least not yet. A hand grips the cracked earth as the survivors try to pull themselves together. The team leader and Ryasuke crouch low, staring at the unnatural ice. They realize they're dealing with something far beyond a normal monster. Hayato stands his ground, but he's changed. Jagged gray armor has started to erupt from his shoulders, and his teeth are sharp. Kazuma just stares at him, waiting for a reaction. Hayato bared his teeth, shouting that they're human and there's no way they're kin to monsters like them. Kazuma's face remains blank for a heartbeat. Then he just loses it, bursting into a mocking laugh that echoes across the field. He reaches out and grabs Hayato's chin, sneering that someone looking like that has no business calling themselves human. The team leader yells for him to stay back, but he's powerless to move. Kazuma lets go with a smirk. He's heard enough and decides it's time to wrap things up. The orange-haired man is already waiting with the rest of their group. "Don't move," he warns the nearby guards. Kazuma turns to leave, casually announcing they're only taking the redhead today. He asks if anyone has a problem with that, as if they could stop him. Branch Chief Shireishi looks over at his fallen men, their bodies still encased in jagged ice. The orange-haired guy scooped up the half-conscious monster leader, tossing him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. The two of them head back toward their giant mount. Kazuma calls out a casual goodbye, treating the whole massacre like a light workout. He pauses for one last look back. He locks eyes with Hayato, who is still standing there, bleeding and partially transformed, while Kenichi stays close by. With a cruel grin, Kazuma promises he'll be keeping an eye on Drill from now on. Hayato can only watch in helpless rage, his golden eyes burning with hate. The giant frog reaches down, scooping up Kazuma and his companion with its massive hand. It hauls them up onto its back as it prepares to leave. The massive beast turns its back on the facility, its heavy footsteps shaking the earth. With one powerful leap, the frog monster clears the fence and vanishes into the urban ruins beyond. Team leader Takagi Gu turns to Branch Chief Shireishi, asking if they should try to go after them. Chief Shireishi shuts it down immediately. He tells them to focus on the injured and admits they wouldn't stand a chance in a pursuit anyway. Ryasuke turned his attention to the frozen comrades, asking Kazuma if he could move and checking on his arm. Kazuma insists he's fine, but he's more worried about whether the team leader is hurt. The team leader stares off into the distance, haunted by the fact that those monsters weren't even trying today. Takagi tried to lighten the mood, telling Kenichi and the other recruits that they showed real guts fighting those things head-on. Kenichi brushes it off, saying he can walk on his own. He asks if the senior who helped them earlier is all right. The team leader helps a battered Hayato to his feet, checking if he's holding up. As they walk, the chief looks at Hayato and asks if he remembers this old man. Hayato looks up, the gears finally turning in his head. A memory of a younger man in a uniform flashes through his mind. It's the same man standing right in front of him now, older, but with the same determined eyes. Recognition hits Hayato like a ton of bricks. Ah! He manages a weak smile, thanking the man for everything he did for him back then. The chief smiles back, telling him he's grown up and they can catch up later, but right now, they need to get those wounds treated. They slowly make their way off the field, leaving the site of their first real defeat behind. The chief watches him go with a heavy heart, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and concern. He thinks to himself that they've finally shown their faces and silently prays for Hayato not to die. A dark thought lingers in his mind. The timing was too perfect. Those mutants were definitely plotting something far worse than a simple raid. The city looks peaceful for now, with the mountains looming in the distance behind the quiet streets. On a nearby screen, some cheesy romantic drama is playing out. Daiki Ishihara is stuck in a hospital bed, clicking through channels because there's absolutely nothing good on TV. Kenichi Takebana tells him to just turn the thing off if it's such garbage. Daiki keeps flipping, but the weather report isn't exactly high-stakes entertainment. The TV drones on about UV rays, while the three of them just sit there in their patient gowns. Kenichi snatched the remote right out of Daiki's hand and flipped it to the weather report. The weather guy is still giving skincare advice as the tension in the room starts to climb. Kenichi isn't in the mood for games and asks if the guy wants to throw down. Daiki just smirks back, joking that he's not really into doing that with guys. That pushes him over the edge, and Kenichi lunges forward, grabbing Daiki by the shirt. Hayato Amagi steps in, trying to play peacemaker before they actually start swinging. Daiki acts offended, asking if this is really how you treat the person who saved your life. Kenichi shoots back, reminding him exactly whose fault this mess was in the first place. The door opens, and the team leader from the bureau peeks his head in to see what the noise is about. He walks in with another official, catching the guys in the middle of their spat. They brought a gift basket full of fruit to check on how the boys are recovering. He confirms they're getting discharged tomorrow, but he also has some pretty big news. The official takes a second to let the moment sink in. Then he breaks the news. They all pass the test and are officially part of the Public Security Bureau. The news hits them like a ton of bricks, and they can't help but celebrate. An official hands them their orientation guides, warning them that things are about to get a lot tougher. They start looking through the details of their training and living arrangements. It's time to move into the dorms, but some of them aren't exactly thrilled about the setup. It turns out all three of them are being shoved into the same room again. They walk into their new home for the week, and the vibe is already pretty sour. Kenichi jokes that being in the same room just makes it easier to finish them off while they're sleeping. Daiki tells him he's being annoying, while Hayato tries to remind everyone they're supposed to be teammates now. Hayato tries to shift the focus to the most important question: how are they deciding who gets which bed? Daiki suggests a fistfight to settle it, and the sparks start flying between him and Kenichi again. Hayato cuts in and claims the top bunk for himself, just to keep those two from being right next to each other. Once things settle down, Hayato starts unpacking and sets a framed photo on his desk. The next morning, Hayato zips up his new bureau uniform, ready to get started. They head out together, though Daiki can't resist taking a jab at how lame the clothes look. The door clicks shut behind them as they leave the room. The dorm room is left empty, with just their desks and computers waiting for them to return. On the desk, the photo shows a younger Hayato with his mother, both smiling. Outside, a large banner marks the start of the official new recruit orientation. A crowd of recruits in blue uniforms gathers to listen to the opening remarks. Branch Chief Dojima takes the stage, looking every bit the stern leader as he addresses the new group. He makes it clear that they need to give their absolute all to every part of the curriculum. The recruits shout back in unison, fully committed to whatever the Bureau has in store for them. Inside the facility, the atmosphere is heavy as the academic portion of the training begins. The screen shows the Eye of Generous God, a plague more commonly known as the egg virus. The instructor explains that over 90% of humanity is already infected, with most people either dying or turning into mindless monsters. Only a tiny fraction become adaptees, those who keep their sanity and gain special powers. These rare individuals are exactly the kind of assets the Public Security Bureau is hunting for. Hayato Amagi and the others listen intently, knowing they fall into that exact category. They learn that the Bureau is split into 3 main branches across the country, with headquarters right in the capital. All of them are currently being groomed for the Eastern Branch's Public Security Division. The lecture shifts to the primary threat, mutants. Once someone mutates, they lose everything that made them human and are driven by nothing but a hunger for flesh. The instructor describes it as a violent, biological addiction to consuming human meat. To make matters worse, science still hasn't figured out why their physical strength and speed get such a massive boost. Because their true limits are unknown, the manual is crystal clear: never engage them without a plan. The recruits take it in, realizing that their new job is basically a suicide mission if they're not careful. The screen shows photos of high-intelligence mutants who possess power far beyond the standard specimens. The real problem is that these smarter monsters are starting to organize and gather their own kind behind the scenes. No one knows what this growing force is planning, but it's a ticking time bomb for humanity. The fact that they're being so open suggests they might be making a move very soon. The instructor wraps up by reminding them of their lack of experience before calling for a 10-minute break. The clock hits noon, marking the end of the morning's theory sessions. They head outside for a quick breather, stretching their limbs after hours of sitting through lectures. Lunch is the only highlight of the day, and they scarf down their food to keep their energy up for the afternoon. Then the physical training kicks in, with everyone suiting up in heavy tactical gear. They spend hours at the range, getting used to the weight and kick of the Bureau's standard firearms. Back in the classroom, they study combat patterns and the best ways to take down various mutant types. The long days start to take their toll, and Daiki Ishihara is already nodding off during the late-night sessions. Even back at the dorm, Kenichi Takebana and Hayato stay up late hitting the books while Daiki gets some shut-eye. Morning brings more cardio, with the group pushing their endurance to the limit on long runs. Daiki finally looks like he's having fun when they break out the heavy artillery, including a massive rocket launcher. After a grueling day, they celebrate with some fried chicken and soda in their room, finally acting like normal kids. But the grind never stops, and Kenichi is right back at his desk the moment the food is gone. Graduation is looming, and Hayato receives his final assignment details from the instructor. He looks over the massive amount of material they've covered, realizing just how much he's actually learned. The three of them check the latest announcements, and Daiki is pumped to see what's coming next. As the sun sets on their final day of training, the entire campus feels like it's holding its breath. Everyone gathers at the sports field for a special announcement regarding the final evaluation. The official with the microphone announces that this is the last event before their graduation ceremony tomorrow. He officially opens the Public Security Division mock battles, the most anticipated part of their training. The crowd erupts as they learn that senior officers have even come out to watch them perform. It's a moment of pride for the recruits who are about to trust each other with their lives. He encourages them to use the battles as a way to learn their teammates' strengths and abilities. He builds the hype by revealing that the participants are the ones everyone's been talking about since day one. The official calls out the names of the three chosen recruits, Hayato Amagi, Daiki Ishihara, and Kenichi Takebana, as they prepare to take the stage. The excitement in the air is palpable as he announces that it's finally time for their opponents, the senior officers, to make their entrance. Four figures wearing unsettling masks walk onto the field, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere of the stadium. The official reveals that no one knows the true identities of these senior officers, making the challenge ahead even more daunting for the new recruits. The announcer kicks off the mock battles and gets ready to call out the first names. Hayato Amagi is up first, with Ishihara and Takebana following right behind him. The official tells Hayato it's his turn to choose an opponent from the lineup. Hayato looks over at the group of masked seniors, trying to decide who to take on. He doesn't hesitate for long, pointing out the second guy in the row. They clear out and head straight for the middle of the training field. The announcer reminds them both that this is just a practice match, so they should try not to kill each other. The senior steps up, his face hidden behind a weird-looking wooden mask. With a shout from the mic, the fight officially begins. Hayato charges in immediately, his arm already glowing with a surge of blue energy. The senior just stands his ground and beckons him to come closer. Hayato swings a massive energy blade that cuts through the air. But he dodged it with ease and countered with a punch straight to the face. Hayato immediately pivots, following up with a heavy horizontal slash. But he followed up with a lightning-fast counter that sent Hayato reeling backward. He followed up with another strike to the face. This speed was completely out of Hayato's league. The audience began to murmur, clearly impressed by the sheer power this senior had displayed. The senior continued his unrelenting assault, unleashing a massive, bone-crushing punch. However, Hayato caught up this time. He stepped in, driving a perfectly aimed thrust directly into the senior's chest. There was a dull thud. The masked man just stares him down, completely unfazed by the attack. But Hayato isn't backing down. His eyes flare with a new level of intensity. The announcer looks a bit stunned, probably not expecting this much heat from a training match. Hayato catches himself and starts to apologize, worried he might have actually hurt the guy. But the senior just pulls up his shirt, revealing he's barely got a scratch on him. Hayato is floored. He can't believe someone could take those hits and be totally fine. That creepy mask just keeps staring back, silent and intimidating. The official shouts into the mic, blown away by Hayato's incredible speed. The senior just waves his hand, telling the kid to bring everything he's got. Hayato takes him up on it, his arm shifting into a high-speed energy drill. He jams it forward, but the senior catches the tip of the spinning drill with his bare hand. Hayato locks eyes with his opponent, focusing every bit of his will into the next move. The pattern remained the same. The senior blocked the strike and countered instantly, landing a lightning-fast punch squarely on Hayato. It's a non-stop storm of strikes, each one landing with a heavy impact. Hayato gritted his teeth, shifting into a defensive stance, yet he refused to back down for even a second, frantically searching for an opening to strike back. Down on the sidelines, Ishihara and the other recruits are speechless at the sheer volume of attacks. Hayato held his breath, waiting for the storm of blows to subside, while desperately trying to break free from his opponent's control and maintain his defensive stance. Hayato sees his opening and knows this is his best shot. They both throw a punch at the exact same time. Their fists are about to collide in a massive head-on clash. The moment their fists collided, Hayato unleashed his energy, transforming his arm into a high-speed rotating drill that deflected the senior's strike. For the first time, the masked senior looks like he might actually be feeling the pressure. Hayato's drill spins even faster, humming with enough power to shake the entire field. Hayato poured every ounce of his remaining strength into the drill. This was the golden opportunity he needed to end the match. He aimed the drill directly at his opponent's throat. Kenichi Takebana and Daiki Ishihara watched from the sidelines, their eyes locked intently on the decisive moment unfolding before them. The force of the drill kicked up a massive cloud of dust, yet both of them remained standing motionless. The energy drill screeched at maximum velocity, yet it ground to a sudden halt just inches from the senior. Suddenly, the senior asks why he's stopping, goading him to keep going. He told Hayato to stop holding back and unleash everything he had. Then he grabbed his hand. In a move that caught everyone off guard, the senior grabbed Hayato's hand and drove the drill straight into his own throat. Hayato was completely bewildered by what was unfolding. He frantically tried to pull his hand away. However, the senior held his arm firmly, pressing the drill against his own throat. In truth, Hayato's drill could not even penetrate the senior's defense. Hayato's fighting spirit was completely shattered. He conceded defeat in this match. He pulls his hand back, his fingers bloodied and raw from the sheer strain of the attack. The PSB official is left speechless, stunned by the sudden conclusion to the round. But before Hayato can walk away, the senior lunges forward and grabs him by the waist. He hoists the rookie up with one hand, treating him like he weighs nothing at all. With a powerful heave, he tosses Hayato high into the air. A massive explosion of blue energy ripples across the entire arena as the move connects. Hayato flails as he's launched skyward, completely at the mercy of the man's strength. The crowd watches in awe as the rookie disappears into the upper reaches of the stadium. From up there, the entire training ground looks like a tiny speck on the map. Hayato screams at the top of his lungs as he starts the long fall back down. The senior looks up, telling him he'll show him a real finishing move before the demonstration ends. He reaches up to his face and slowly begins to pull off the wooden mask. The man underneath is revealed to be Rikuseki, the elite leader of PSB's Division 1. One of the recruits recognizes him from training videos, finally realizing who they were really up against. Hayato keeps falling, the ground rushing up at a terrifying speed. Rikuseki stands his ground, waiting for the perfect moment to move. He catches the rookie with ease, treating the massive fall like it was just a light hop. Seki gives him a nod and tells Hayato Amagi it was a damn good fight. Gasping for air, Hayato can only offer a weak thank you to the headquarters legend. Seki waves to the cheering crowd, officially finishing his part of the demonstration. A girl in the audience screams out his name, clearly a huge fan of the team leader. Seki heads back to the sidelines, looking like he didn't even break a sweat. He looks down at the hole in his uniform, noting that Hayato might actually be scout material. He glances at his palm, seeing a small smear of blood from the rookie's drill. Seki wonders how long it's been since anyone has managed to actually draw blood from him. Next up is Daiki Ishihara, and he's clearly hyped to show what he can do against the seniors. He steps onto the field to face a senior wearing a long-nosed mask. Daiki doesn't wait for a signal, charging straight at his opponent with a cocky grin. He lunges forward, but the senior just stands there with his hands casually in his pockets. The masked man watches the rookie's approach, completely unfazed by his speed. Daiki Ishihara lunges at the masked senior with a fierce expression, determined to make his mark. He threw 2 hooks, but the senior remained calm and unmoved by the rookie's aggression. The announcer hypes up the crowd, calling out Ishihara's preemptive strike. Daiki's yellow eyes gleam with competitive fire as he focuses everything on his target. Suddenly, Daiki's body stiffens, and he begins to lose his balance for no apparent reason. He collapses face first onto the grass, a faint trail of smoke rising from his uniform. Ishihara lies motionless on the field, completely knocked out in only 3 seconds. The other recruits, including Takebana and Amagi, are left speechless by the sudden defeat. The senior kneels beside the fallen recruit, urging the boy to pull himself together. Realizing the boy is truly unconscious, the senior signals for the match to be cancelled immediately. He calls for the medical team to step in as he stays by Daiki's side. The senior removes his mask, revealing himself as Aikta Hiroki, a Team 1 chief. He looks concerned that he lost control of his strength. A few moments later, Daiki begins to stir as he is supported by 2 other agents. The official explains that Daiki lost consciousness due to the electric shock from Senior Aikta's power. Daiki wakes up confused and immediately tries to head back to the field for another round. The announcer tells him to rest just to be safe, despite Daiki's protests that he's fine. The crowd gives a warm round of applause as the second demonstration comes to an end. Lastly, the announcer calls for Agent Takebana to step forward and choose his opponent. One of the seniors steps onto the sports field, ready to represent the veterans. Another senior in a hooded mask wonders if he'll ever get a turn to fight the rookies. Aikta jokes that the hooded man wasn't chosen because his identity is too obvious. With everyone in place, the announcer gives the signal for the final match to begin. Takebana discards his outer gear, revealing his lean, muscular build as he steps onto the field. His opponent, the senior, stood ready with his wooden mask and a calm fighting stance. He didn't waste a second lunging straight for a preemptive strike, but the rookie managed to raise his arm and block it just in time. Kenishi countered with a flurry of lightning-fast strikes, showing off his physical reinforcement. But he was countered with a heavy downward hook the moment he left himself open. The senior followed up with a high kick, leaving Kenishi with no time to even catch his breath. Kenishi gritted his teeth in frustration as he was relentlessly pushed back by his opponent. Senior Kenishi's mask remains impassive as he watches the rookie's every move. However, in an unexpected move, Kenishi suddenly unleashed a lightning-fast straight punch directly into the senior's face. He skidded across the grass, sent sliding by the sheer force behind Kenishi's technique. Kenishi stood his ground, appearing completely composed despite the intensity of the previous onslaughts. In the audience, Mayu and her friend wonder if the masked man's secret identity is actually Kazuma. Senior catches his breath, acknowledging that Kenishi is strong for a reinforced type. Kenishi looks up, asking the senior to show his true strength without holding back. Senior obliges, his hands beginning to glow with the power of his Qigong cannon. Kenishi roared, "Give it everything you've got," and immediately surged forward to attack. The collision ignited a blinding white flash as the senior's counterstrike halted Kenishi's assault. Kenikai reels back, his eyes narrowing as he tries to process the speed of the senior's movements. To his shock, Senior deflects his next counterattack with a simple, blue-tinted palm block. Kenishi stares in disbelief, wondering how his strongest strikes are being so easily redirected. Senior raises his hand, the air around his palm shimmering with intense pressure as he prepares his next move. A close-up of his wooden mask reveals the eerie, fixed expression that hides the veteran's true focus. With a sharp movement, he releases a concentrated burst of air that strikes Kenichi with the force of a physical blow. Tachibana cries out in pain as the invisible shockwave slams into his chest, knocking the wind out of him. The power of the air blast ripples across the training field, throwing the rookie back with incredible momentum. Kenichi skids across the turf, his body tumbling before he finally comes to a halt face down on the grass. Senior lowers his hand, standing calmly amidst the swirling dust from his own impact. Hayato and Daiki watch from the sidelines, their faces pale with shock at the senior's overwhelming technique. The announcer wonders aloud if the match will end so abruptly, sensing the massive gap in experience. In the stands, the girl Mayu is convinced the senior is actually someone named Kazuma, though the official beside her plays dumb. Kenichi groans, his hands trembling as he pushes himself up from the ground through sheer willpower. The announcer is surprised as Kenichi manages to stand back up, his eyes filled with a fierce, stubborn fire. Senior watches him with a silent challenge, his stance inviting the rookie to try hitting him again. Kenichi takes the bait, charging forward with a desperate burst of speed for one final assault. Kenichi focuses his power into his palm once more, the air distorting in front of him like a lens. He releases a close-range air cannon, the force visible as a bright flash of energy that hits Tachibana square in the torso. Kenichi is stunned by the sudden long-range properties of the attack, which he hadn't expected. The pressure from the blast was so immense that it physically forced him backward. Immediately after, the senior lunged forward, unleashing a barrage of punches upon the rookie. The senior follows through with a heavy blow, his fist reinforced by a concentrated pocket of air. Kenichi raises his arms in a desperate guard, but the impact rattles his entire frame and threatens to break his defense. Another powerful air blast sends the recruit reeling, the sheer force of it visible as a sphere of blue-white light. Daiki and Hayato are amazed by Kenichi's resilience, wondering how he can still stand after taking such a beating. The official with glasses explains that the Qigong cannon works by compressing air and releasing it all at once in a devastating burst. Hayato watches from the side, figuring out the senior is using air pressure blasts from his palms. He realizes that the recoil after a blast is the only window Kenichi has to strike back. Kenichi puts all his weight into his next move, betting everything on one opening. The senior fires again, but the discharge leaves him wide open for a split second. The masked man flinches as he gets stuck in the recoil. Kenichi digs his foot into the turf and lunges. He skips the punch and delivers a brutal headbutt right into the mask. The wood splits with a loud crack under the impact. Kenichi didn't hold anything back. The force sends the veteran tumbling back onto the ground. He's flat on his back, and the announcer screams that the senior has actually been taken down. Kenichi catches his breath as the crowd erupts in cheers. Senior Kazuma sits on the ground, his mask shattered after the decisive hit. Kazuma removes his mask, revealing a bleeding wound on his forehead. He coldly declares, "All right, I'm switching to serious mode now." Noticing his injury, Taniguchi immediately calls for the medical team. A medic rushes in to check the wound, noting that the cut on Kazuma's head is deep enough for stitches. Kenichi stands nearby, looking disappointed that the fight ended just as things were getting interesting. The official declares the mock battle concluded to the cheers of the watching recruits. He mentions that, unfortunately, team leader Takagi didn't get his turn to fight this time. Takagi sits in the stands, holding his mask and looking pretty bummed about missing out. The students give a big round of applause for all the participants' hard work. Rikuseki walks up to Hayato with a friendly smile, praising his performance. The two of them share a firm, respectful handshake. Riku tells the young recruit that he's expecting great things from him in the future. Hayato, now sporting his signature silver hair, responds with a confident yes. Time passes and it's finally the big day, the official graduation ceremony. The top recruits walk up the steps as their names are called in front of the assembly. An official stands at the podium, formally declaring them members of the Public Safety Bureau. Daiki, Hayato, and Kenichi stand in line, looking sharp in their new uniforms. Hayato finally receives his certificate of appointment. He gives a sharp salute, marking the official start of his career as an officer. Night falls over the city, where dangerous shadows are starting to stir. Deep in the darkness of an alleyway, a group of mutants begins to gather. Among them is a mutant with jagged teeth and orange hair, standing beside a more human-looking accomplice. Their leader, a figure in a heavy white cloak, reminds them to carry out their duties to the very end. Two more mutants, one blonde and one with his hair tied back, promise they won't let him down. A blue-haired mutant and a dark-clothed one with glowing red eyes look on with malicious grins. The hooded leader tells them he's counting on them for the future of their kind. Back at the public safety building, the lights are still on late into the night. Hayato, Daiki, and their teammate wait in the lounge, curious about which team they'll be assigned to. Kazuma is on the phone, mentioning that their superiors are already on their way. The door opens, and another officer walks into the room. That is Ikeda Hiroki, a senior, greeting the new team members. The group stands up to greet their fellow officer. Ikeda Hiroki shakes Hayato's hand, saying he's looking forward to working with them. He reaches out to the next teammate, but there's a playful look in his eyes. A small spark of electricity jumps between them during the handshake. Turns out Ikeda is a bit of a prankster. The tension breaks, and the others find the lighthearted greeting pretty funny. No time for more jokes, though. Ikeda tells them they're heading out on a mission immediately. They race through the halls of Division 1, where missing persons reports have been piling up in the Central District. The situation is serious. They've found significant amounts of blood at the disappearance sites. Ikeda pulls up the latest security camera footage from the area. The grainy video shows a dark, blurry figure moving through the shadows. He explains that a mutant is roaming around riding on the back of another, just like the ones they've seen before. Ikeda explains that because the disappearances always coincide with these mutant sightings, they must be the ones responsible. He tells the recruits that they'll be conducting continuous patrols to track them down and put an end to the incidents. Ikeda turns to Daiki Ishihara, asking if he's capable of handling a motorcycle for their patrols. He pairs up Daiki and Hayato Amagi, while deciding to take Kenichi as his own partner for the mission. In a quiet alleyway, a regular citizen with glasses is heading home after a long night. A tall, pale man with messy pink hair suddenly steps into the light, blocking the man's path. With a cold, indifferent look, the mutant talk H-letter 183NG asks the terrified man if he knows what a mutant actually is. The man is frozen in fear, unable to process what's happening as the mutant looms over him. The mutant leans in, warning the guy to keep quiet and do exactly as he's told if he wants to stay alive. The victim's eyes widen in horror as he realizes there's no escape from the monster in front of him. The mutant pins the man down, his expression completely blank as he threatens the helpless victim. He tells the man to shut up, making it clear that he won't hesitate to kill him right then and there. Nearby, another man spots the attack and is immediately gripped by panic. Terrified, the runner screams for help and tries to flee the scene as fast as his legs can carry him. The pink-haired guy slaps the victim and frustratedly tells him that this is his own fault. The runner collapses onto the pavement, groaning in pain as his glasses are knocked off. The mutant calls out to a creature named Clover, ordering it to finish off the man on the ground. A large, beige, blob-like creature emerges from the shadows, ready to carry out its master's command. Meanwhile, the other person desperately tries to flee and pulls out their phone to report to the police that there is a monster there. He frantically tells the public safety operator that a monster is chasing him near the central intersection. Clover lets out a shrill screech as it begins to close the gap between itself and the runner. The creature picks up speed, its strange, bulky form moving with surprisingly high speed. The man screams one last plea for help as the beige monster looms over him. Clover stands over its prey, its mouth hanging open as blood drips onto the ground from its massive body. Meanwhile, Daiki and Hayato are patrolling the city streets on their motorcycle. Hayato, riding on the back, mentions how bored he is, and asks Daiki how much longer their shift lasts. His phone suddenly buzzes. It's a direct call from the Bureau headquarters. He answers the call, identifying himself as an agent from Division 1. He tells Daiki that there's a murder sighting at the central intersection, and they need to head there immediately. Daiki tells him to hold on tight as he leans the bike into a sharp turn at high speed. They arrive on the scene just as Clover is fleeing with someone on its back. Daiki tells Hayato to look closely. He can see that it's not another mutant being carried away. It's a terrified woman, tied up and trapped on the back of the massive creature. The victim cries out for help, her voice filled with absolute terror as the monster runs. Daiki pushes the motorcycle to its limit, desperate to catch up to the fleeing monster. Hayato yells to the woman that they are PSB agents, and that they'll have her safe in no time. The woman's screams continue as Clover continues its frantic dash through the city. Hayato readies his drill arm, preparing to take the creature down as they pull alongside it. The chase intensifies, with the heavy thuds of the creature's feet echoing against the buildings. Hayato realizes the bike is shaking too much, and tells Daiki he needs to get even closer for his strike. Clover makes a sudden move, causing a near collision that forces the motorcycle to swerve. The bike skids to a halt, and Hayato curses their luck as they watch the monster pull further away. Daiki suddenly stops and demands that Hayato take over driving the motorcycle, calling him Drill. Hayato is completely baffled by the sudden request. Daiki insists that at their current speed, they still have a chance to catch up to the target. Hayato screams Daiki's name in frustration as he's forced to take the handlebars. Hayato ends up in the driver's seat, grumbling to himself about what a hassle this pursuit has become. He guns the engine, pushing the bike to high speeds and worrying that his driving might actually be illegal. The scene shifts to a white van speeding away through the dark city streets. The mutant Talk H1ED3NG has several terrified men trapped within the coils of his long, muscular tail. He coldly tells his captives to stop dragging their feet and get into the van already. The victims are forced against the side of the vehicle, shaking with fear under the mutant's intense gaze. He tightens his tail around them, mockingly telling them they're all going to die anyway, so they should just quit resisting. The captives are shoved roughly into the back of the van as it prepares to depart. Inside the vehicle, the mutant M1EB7C vest sits waiting, his expression calm and disturbingly polite. One victim is already bound in layers of green tape, muffled and struggling on the floor of the van. The man in the suit pulls out a roll of tape, telling the new arrivals to come forward one by one. The pink-haired mutant's tail releases its grip on the group as they are loaded in. Seizing a moment of distraction, one of the men in a green tracksuit bolts away, screaming for help. The mutant Talk H1ED3NG looks bored by the attempt, asking seriously, again, as if chasing down fleeing victims is just a chore. He swings his powerful tail through the air with lethal precision. The impact is swift and violent, striking the fleeing man from behind. The victim is slammed face first into the street, blood pooling around him instantly. The mutant turns his attention to the remaining survivors, asking if they're idiots for trying to escape in this situation. He strikes one of the men across the face, shouting for him to shut up and get inside. The mutant M1EB7C vest warns his partner that killing the humans drops their freshness and demands he bring them back immediately. The pink-haired mutant snaps back, blaming the victims for running and telling his companion to do it himself if he's so worried. The suit mutant maintains his eerily friendly expression, simply repeating his order to bring the captives back. The mutant Talk H1ED3NG scowls, clearly annoyed by being bossed around. He mutters "fine" and turns to finish gathering the victims. Suddenly, a motorcycle screeches to a halt nearby. Tomoya Taniguchi, wearing a black jacket and sunglasses, steps onto the scene. Tomoya is on his cell phone, reporting that they've discovered a mutant and requesting immediate backup at his location. The pink-haired mutant waves him away dismissively, claiming he's only interested in humans today and telling him to get lost. He states that he's already met his quota for the day and has no reason to deal with an adaptee. Tomoya ignores the warning, his fingers transforming into long, razor-sharp claws as he vows to kill the mutant before leaving. Elsewhere, a woman is seen bound to the back of Clover, desperately shouting into the air for someone to help her. Suddenly, Daiki Ishihara leaps into action, jumping toward the moving creature from out of nowhere. Daiki lets out a sigh of relief as he reaches the woman, prepared to pull her away from the monster. With a powerful strike, he severs the woman's bonds, freeing her from Clover's grasp. Daiki catches the woman safely in his arms as they hit the ground, away from the creature's path. Clover stops and turns, its simple, dotted eyes fixed on the recruit who just took its prize. Daiki tells the woman to run for it, while she thanks him through her tears. Suddenly, Clover begins to spin its body at an incredible speed, turning into a blurring saucer of beige flesh. Daiki stares in absolute disbelief, wondering what the hell this creature is doing. Clover's spinning form lashes out, its sharp edges cutting through the air with dangerous speed. Clover continues its high-speed rotation, its body flattening into a lethal, razor-sharp saucer that slices through the air toward Daiki. Daiki barely manages to leap out of the way, the creature's edge whistling past him with terrifying speed. The impact of the creature's spin leaves a deep, jagged gouge in the pavement, showing just how dangerous its transformation is. Daiki curses under his breath as he skids across the stone, struggling to regain his footing while the creature prepares for another pass. The monster's minimalist face, with its tiny red eyes and sharp teeth, remains fixed on its target as it maintains its dizzying spin. A hand slams down onto the ground, stabilizing a body for a sudden and powerful counter-movement. Using the momentum from his low stance, Daiki launches a powerful kick into the side of the spinning saucer, shouting for the monster to take his blow. The impact is massive, knocking Clover off balance, and sending the beige creature tumbling helplessly through the air. Hayato Amagi seizes the opening, unleashing his devastating PINECONE drill punch that strikes the target with explosive force. Standing amidst the smoke and settling dust, Hayato pants heavily, his drill arm glowing from the heat of the impact. He quickly turns to check on his friend, calling out Daiki's name to see if he escaped the creature's lethal edges unharmed. Daiki responds by tackling Hayato in a joyful hug from behind, laughing that drill has saved his life once again. He playfully squishes Hayato's cheeks, boasting about how he got the woman to safety while his friend took care of the monster. When Daiki asks about the powerful move he just saw, Hayato modestly explains that it's a technique he's been practicing on his own during training. Daiki sighs with a mix of awe and jealousy, thinking about how cool special types are and wishing he wasn't just a simple enhancement type himself. Tires screech against the pavement as a vehicle pulls up. Hayato Amagi and Daiki look over, recognizing their superior immediately. The team leader hops out to check on them, and the two rookies quickly assure him they're doing just fine. He lets out a long breath, visibly relieved that his newest recruits didn't get killed on their very first day. The boss gives them a bit of praise and asks where the mutant went. Daiki points right at his partner, bragging that Hayato's drill completely shredded the monster and saved a civilian. The captain offers a small smile, reminding them that protecting lives is always more important than the kill. He looks over the bloody remains of the Clover monster and tells them the research division will handle the cleanup while they move to the next site. His expression turns serious as he mentions that something unfortunate just happened nearby. They follow him to a staircase where a small crowd of people has already started gathering. The atmosphere is heavy, and several other PSB members are standing around in total shock. Against a blood-spattered wall lies the body of Tomoya Taniguchi, another rookie from their division. The Adaptitalk Bui kneels over the corpse, unable to process the sight. He breaks down into tears, sobbing out apologies to his fallen teammate. An official places a hand on the grieving man's shoulder to try and steady him. Research division members move in with their equipment, politely asking everyone to clear the scene. A blood-soaked cloth is draped over Tomoya's face as he's officially marked for transport to the hospital. A quiet city street, peaceful before the storm. The peace shatters as a car swerves and people start screaming. A young Tomoya and his friends stop in their tracks, sensing the breath of danger. A massive creature bursts onto the scene, chasing a terrified man. Total chaos erupts as everyone runs for their lives. Tomoya urges the others to get away as fast as they can. But he spots an elderly man frozen in fear and turns back to help. The monster raises its blade-like arm, ready to strike the helpless man. Tomoya's fist slams into the creature's face with incredible force. Hayato screams for him to run, terrified for his friend. The old man stares up in disbelief at his young savior. Tomoya looks down, confused by the strange sensation in his hand. Blood spatters the ground as the creature falls. His hand has transformed into jagged, bloody claws. Classmates record the scene, shocked to find out he's an adaptee. He admits he had no idea he possessed this power until now. The news quickly picks up the story of the heroic high school student. On TV, Tomoya humbly says he only did what anyone should do. He's honored at a ceremony, standing beside an official from the bureau. He was a hero in the making, with a bright future ahead of him. Now that same smile is framed in black for his funeral. Aikta asks Hayato if he's ever attended a funeral before. Incense smoke rises before the portrait of their fallen comrade. Hayato stands among the mourners, the weight of the loss sinking in. Floral tributes line the hall for the young man who died. The attendees gather for a somber traditional meal. Aikta suggests Hayato use his first paycheck to buy a mourning suit. He warns that in this line of work, they'll see far too many funerals. He also mentions that the Team 3 leader will be temporarily joining them. Between injuries and Tomoya's death, the leader is all alone now. Hayato and Daiki listen, the grim reality of their situation settling in. A man with a topknot drinks in silence, mourning his lost teammate. Somewhere else, a man in a white shirt surveys an abandoned warehouse. He orders a grotesque mouth monster to prepare for its next move. Variant leader is disgusted to learn they're using lower ranks as bait. The man in the white shirt explains it's the fastest way to distract the humans. Variant leader would rather stay and kill every human they can find. But he's told they need to avoid risks and build up their strength. He's reminded that the organization saved his life when he was half dead. From now on, he will obey the organization's decisions without question. The man calls out the names of their next targets. Tomorrow, it'll be their turn to play their part. A massive clawed foot slams into the ground. Leo Mutant grins, eager to head outside and have some fun. In the hideout, the man in the white shirt is surprised his turn has come so soon. He tells the red-haired Kyohei they're short-staffed and need to move the food warehouse tomorrow. He promises there will be plenty of humans and lower ranks there to keep them busy. At night, a blue car pulls up quietly outside a dark, silent building. The man with the topknot asks Hayato if this is the right place. He tells him to report their location to team leader Aikta immediately. Inside the PSB office, the analyst Megan is busy sorting through data. He sits down with Hayato to go over a new discovery. Hayato carefully sniffs a piece of tissue, focusing on the scent. Megan asks for his input on the samples. Hayato looks thoughtful as he takes in the distinct odors. He starts pinning photos to the board, sorting them by their scent profile. Megan watches closely, his hypothesis beginning to take shape. Hayato is confused, but Megan explains that he's noticed something strange. He recalls the mutants at the practical exam, saying they could smell something on Hayato. His theory is that mutants have the ability to track one another by scent. Since Hayato carries that same scent, he's like a beacon to any mutant nearby. But it goes both ways. Hayato can also learn to track them down using the same method. The test proves it's possible, as Hayato accurately distinguished between the human and mutant tissues. Megan decides they'll start detection training today to see how far he can go with it. Later that night, the man with the topknot leads Hayato through a dark alley. He draws his gun and peers around a corner, checking for any movement. They step into the massive, silent warehouse. Hayato keeps his guard up as they move deeper into the dark interior. Suddenly, a rustling sound comes from behind some crates. Hayato aims his weapon toward the sound of faint groaning. His eyes widen in shock at what he's discovered. Several missing people are tied up and left on the cold floor. He calls out for the team leader to come and see the find. But a massive, gaping mouth rises up from the shadows behind him. Two more mutants drop down from above, cutting off their escape route. Leo Mutant lands right in front of them, blocking the way. The man with the top knot is stunned. They've been lured into an ambush. Sho emerges from the shadows, taunting the silver-haired bastard. The man with the top knot recognizes the power coming from Sho's arm. Takagi just smiles, glad they could finally meet face to face. Sho asks how they even know his name. The agent asks if he remembers Tomoya Taniguchi. Sho's grin widens as he recalls the guy on the bike. He admits he left the body behind as a warning because the PSB kept getting in his way. He scoffs at how long it took for the biker bastard to finally die. The man with the top knot is consumed by a blinding rage as he faces his brother's killer. He lets out a guttural scream, ready to unleash everything he has on the taunting mutant. Suddenly, his expression shifts from fury to cold, paralyzing terror. The massive creature lunges forward with its multi-layered mouth of jagged teeth. Before he could even react, the monster clamped its jaws onto his midsection, its teeth sinking deep into his flesh. Hayato watches the horrific scene, screaming for the monster to stop its brutal assault. Nearby, Leo Mutant continues to slash at everything in sight with his fiery claws. The veteran agent's cries of agony echo through the warehouse as the mutant begins to crush him. Sho watches the gruesome display with a cruel grin, mocking the agonizing pain of the victim. Thick blood drips from the beast's mouth as it ruthlessly begins to feast on its prey. Hayato is frozen in place, desperately calling out for the team leader to do something. The mutant growls low in its throat, its small eyes fixed on the remaining adaptees. Suddenly, the creature's massive head begins to shudder and distend in a grotesque fashion. A powerful internal force starts to rip through the monster's tough, gray skin from the inside. A hand wreathed in intense, golden flames suddenly bursts through the top of the mutant head. The beast lets out a final, agonizing shriek as fire begins to consume it from within. Sho's smug expression vanishes instantly, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief and alarm. Leo Mutant pauses his assault, staring at the figure clawing its way out of the burning carcass. The flaming hand tears the creature's skull apart, scattering gore as the fire spreads. Emerging from the remains of the monster is Aikta, his body wreathed in flames as he stares down Sho. Sho grits his teeth, unable to hide his growing frustration and fear of the flaming agent. Aikta's eyes glow with an intense, orange light, signaling that he is ready to unleash his true power. He crouches low over the dead beast, his breath heavy as he regains his footing. Though covered in blood and exhaustion, his presence is completely overwhelming. Sho remains wary, never expecting an adaptee with such potent fire-based abilities. Aikta stands tall, declaring that it is now his turn to go on the offensive. In the distance, lower-rank mutants are seen dragging the captured humans away into the night. Aikta spots the movement and realizes they are trying to escape with the victims. He turns to Hayato and orders him to leave the big fight to him and go after the captives. Hayato hesitates for a split second, concern for his leader visible on his face. Sho watches them closely, gauging his chance to strike while they are distracted. The mutants continue their frantic retreat, disappearing through the warehouse exit. Leo Mutant shifts to block the path, intent on preventing Hayato from following his kin. Aikta stands his ground, staring into the eyes of the lion-like beast. He shouts for Hayato to go, his voice filled with absolute authority. He charges his fists with golden flames, telling Hayato to leave the battle to him. Aikta lunges forward, a flaming fist leading the charge against the towering Leo Mutant. He urges Hayato to hurry before the trail of the captured humans is lost. Hayato clenches his teeth, knowing he has a vital task to complete. With a determined shout, he dashes past the clash, his drill-like arms ready for battle. A massive burst of fire erupts as Aikta's strike collides with Leo Mutant's claw. The lion mutant catches the blow, his massive frame absorbing the impact of the flaming fist. Leo Mutant is unfazed by the heat, mocking Aikta for thinking his flames could penetrate such a thick mane. Meanwhile, Sho's lizard-like tail whips through the air with incredible speed, aiming for a new target. The tail wraps around Hayato's waist, jerking him back just as he is about to exit the warehouse. Sho pulls back his arm, readying his next move with cold, calculated precision. With a violent yank, Hayato is slammed into a stack of heavy crates, the impact shattering the wood. Sho stares down at the boy, declaring that he has no intention of letting him escape. Aikta is momentarily distracted, gasping in shock as he sees his protege being cornered. But the towering Leo mutant immediately lunges at Aikta, forcing him to refocus on the life-or-death duel in front of him. Leo mutant taunts the team leader, telling him to keep his eyes on the one about to kill him. Desperate and bleeding, Aikta shouts for Hayato to hold on, promising to back him up as soon as he can. Hayato struggles to stand up amidst the wreckage of the crates, his drills still spinning weakly. Before he can recover, Sho's tail strikes again, catching him squarely across the face. The force of the blow sends Hayato reeling back, blood flying from his mouth and nose. Sho stands ready, his expression bored as he prepares to finish the little shark once and for all. Hayato's eyes widen as he sees the attack coming, his primal instincts screaming at him to move. Sho unleashes a powerful shockwave technique called Sonic Anchor, a blast of air and speed. Hayato is caught in the center of the explosion, his shark-like teeth bared in a desperate snarl. The warehouse floor erupts under the pressure of the attack, sending debris flying in every direction. Hayato collapses to his knees, his breathing ragged as he tries to process what just happened. He realizes with sinking dread that Sho is simply too fast for him to dodge effectively. Still, he refuses to give up, telling himself that he just needs to buy a little more time. Sho watches him struggle, mocking the boy for even considering a retreat. The mutant calmly begins to shed his outer jacket, preparing for a more serious bout. Sho's eyes narrow with murderous intent as he repeats his promise. He isn't letting anyone leave this warehouse alive. Over at the Eastern branch office, a new recruit is pushing a treadmill to its absolute breaking point. Daiki finally hops off to catch his breath, drenched in sweat. A staff member checking the data tells him he just shattered the branch's speed record. The news brings a cocky grin to his face, and he asks if that officially makes him the best they've got. The official looks on, already trying to figure out how to best utilize that level of speed in a real fight. Later that night, shadows blur through the city streets as something moves through the dark. A pair of mutants are seen hauling a captive civilian away, ignoring their desperate pleas for help. The monsters suddenly skid to a halt when a voice calls out, announcing that they've been found. A white flash tears through the air, cleaving both mutants in two before they can even process what's happening. Daiki stands behind the falling remains of his targets, his sword already drawn and ready. He inspects the blood on his blade with a satisfied look, clearly happy with how the hunt went. Daiki strikes a pose with his sword over a dead monster, joking that he looks like a total samurai. He turns back to the survivor he just saved, glad to see the guy is still in one piece. The survivor is a mess, his clothes torn to shreds, but the adaptee helps him up anyway. The group realizes they've actually been rescued by someone from the Public Safety Bureau. He points them toward the main street, telling them they can find more help once they reach it. With the civilians headed for safety, the swordsman jumps on his bike and revs the engine to join the next fight. Deep in the wreckage, a massive monster with jagged fangs stares down its next target. The beast taunts Chief, nodding that while fire doesn't work on him, he's still going to get cooked. The variant beast looms over him with a terrifying grin, bragging about how much meat there is to chew on. Saliva drips from its rows of razor-sharp teeth as the creature prepares to feed. Chief doesn't flinch, charging straight into the monster's reach with a defiant shout. He lands a heavy blow right on the monster's jaw, but the beast barely seems to notice. The counterattack sends Chief sliding backward across the debris-covered floor. Blood streams down his face as he grits his teeth, refusing to give in. The variant beast leaps high into the air, its shadow falling over the downed fighter. It slams down with enough force to shatter the ground, sending dust everywhere. A follow-up blow connects squarely with Chief's face, sending a spray of blood into the air. Before he can recover, the monster grabs him by the head like he's a toy. It prepares to finish him off with a bone-crushing squeeze. The monster's eyes glow with a sadistic light as it enjoys the struggle. It slams Chief's head into the concrete with a sickening thud. The man lies there face down, his body battered and motionless in the dirt. With his last ounce of strength, the commander raised both hands to grab the mutant's arm. Sho, the pink-haired mutant, screams in rage at his opponent for being so persistent. Hayato hunches over, his twin drill arms dripping with gore as he gasps for air. Suddenly, the whip lashed out, but Hayato managed to jump aside just in time to dodge it. Sho backed away. Finding his prey so annoyingly persistent, he asked if the brat truly believed he had enough left in him to continue. The warrior doesn't answer, charging back into the fray with everything he has left. A cable lashes across his cheek, adding another deep cut to his battered face. Sho shifts his weight, easily tracking the movements of his exhausted prey. The warrior skids to a halt, struggling just to stay on his feet. Sho unleashed his tentacles, deciding it was time to end this game. He unleashes a torrential rain of metal tentacles that swarm over his opponent. Hayato is hammered from every side, coughing up blood as the cables connect. The warrior forces his drills into a defensive spin, trying to carve a path through the onslaught. The impact sends sparks flying as he fights to stay upright against the barrage. He focuses his last bit of strength, his drills roaring as he charges through the gap. Sho's arrogant smile vanished when he realized that Hayato had used the drill to entangle his tentacles and pull him into range. He tries to yell something, but his face is full of panic as the attack closes in. The drill stabs straight through Sho's chest, bursting out the other side in a shower of blood. The mutant stares at the massive hole in his torso, unable to comprehend his defeat. Hayato glares through the gore, panting heavily with his teeth bared in a silent snarl. On this side, the commander unleashed a blast of intense flames directly onto the monster's protective arm. The variant beast screams in pain as the fire starts to take hold. Flames engulf the beast's upper body as it continues to howl in agony. Chief doesn't let up, keeping the heat on the creature to ensure it stays down. The beast tries to swat him away, but its movements are becoming erratic from the burns. Chief steps in and lands a massive punch right on its charred jaw. A hand wreathed in fire readies another devastating strike. He landed an explosive punch straight into its heart, sending fire and blood spraying everywhere. The monster is completely overwhelmed, its form starting to disintegrate under the intense heat. A close-up of its jagged teeth as it lets out one final, agonizing shriek. The huge beast finally collapses, its body smoking as it hits the ground. Chief looks down at the charred remains, his own body covered in soot and blood. He stands over the corpse for a moment, catching his breath. The battle is over, leaving nothing but a smoldering pile where the monster once stood. The commander looks exhausted, blood dripping from his face as he comments on the bad aftertaste of the fight. In another corner of the ruins, Sho, with his chest pierced through and a manic glint in his eyes, was binding Hayato with a tangle of metal cables. The cables tighten around the boy's neck, digging into his skin. The mutant looks down at him with a smug grin, clearly enjoying his advantage. Hayato struggles against the restraint, his shark-like teeth bared in a snarl. Sho laughs maniacally, bragging that a minor wound like that won't be enough to kill him. He continues to tighten the grip, savoring the sound of the metal grinding together. The boy's golden eyes are wide with the effort of trying to break free. The mutant complains about all the trouble he had to go through just to finish this. He looks completely confident that the fight is already over. Suddenly, Chief appears right behind him, his expression cold and bloodied. The mutant's eyes go wide as he realizes someone just snuck up on him. Sho tries to dodge away, realizing it was a close call. Chief lunges after him, declaring that there's no way he's letting him escape. The mutant huffs in frustration, annoyed that these guys are so stubborn. He tries to put some distance between them, but he's not fast enough. He gets sent tumbling through the air after a heavy hit. Daiki arrives on the scene, surprised by the timing of it all. Before Sho can recover, A hand grabs him firmly by the throat. He gasps for air, his eyes bulging as he looks up at his captor. Chief stares him down with a gaze that says he's done playing games. The mutant's pupils shrink as he realizes he's in serious trouble. The commander unleashes his flaring flames technique, turning the mutant into a human torch. Sho lets out one last scream as the golden fire consumes him. The fire burns bright for a second before the charred mutant collapses into a heap. Chief shakes the remaining flames off his arm, his job finally done. He immediately turns to check on Hayato, making sure he isn't seriously hurt. Daiki walks up, wondering why the commander waited so long to use that kind of power. Chief explains to Daiki that he prefers not to use his flames unless it's absolutely necessary. Daiki ignores the advice, swinging his katana around and bragging about the monsters he already killed. The commander asks if he managed to secure the monsters that fled and the civilians they took hostage. Daiki confidently reports that the victims were rescued safely and told to contact the security office. Chief's expression turns stern as he asks if Daiki actually bothered to get any of their contact information. Daiki hesitates, admitting he was in such a rush to get back to the scene that he forgot to ask for details. Chief lectures him, reminding him that keeping track of victims is an essential part of the public safety squad's job. He tells the younger fighter to focus on helping the remaining survivors while they wait for the backup unit to arrive. Nearby, Hayato is checking on a wounded man when he notices something wrong with the head count. The silver-haired boy looks up at Chief, reporting that it seems 3 of the people are still missing. Deep in the forest, the 3 missing survivors are running frantically through the dark undergrowth. One of the men, wearing a teal jacket, pants heavily and asks if they're even running in the right direction. Kyohei Kinoshita, a young man with black messy hair and a white shirt, leads the way, insisting the parking lot is close. The man in the teal jacket starts to feel a pang of guilt, wondering if it was really okay for them to just abandon everyone. Kyohei retorts sharply, arguing that there was no guarantee the public safety squad would win the fight. He keeps up the fast pace, telling the others they should just be grateful they managed to escape with their lives. The survivor reluctantly agrees, though his expression is still filled with doubt and physical exhaustion. Kyohei's expression shifts into something much colder as he remarks that the ones who survive are the real winners. Back at the warehouse, Daiki stands by as the team works to stabilize the people who were rescued. Chief leans over one of the survivors, asking if they're okay, but his attention is quickly drawn to a body on the ground. He stops in front of a man lying face down on the pavement, dressed in a familiar white shirt. The commander's face is grim as he reaches out and confirms that the man is already dead. He reaches down to examine the body, his hands still stained with blood from the earlier battle. Chief places a hand on the corpse's shoulder, his eyes narrowing as he looks at the victim's face. He stares at the dead man, realizing with horror that the person in the forest is an imposter. Meanwhile, Kyohei stops in a small clearing and pulls a modern smartphone out of his pocket. He speaks calmly into the phone, telling someone on the other end that it's safe to come out now. The man in the teal jacket is stunned, demanding to know why Kyohei didn't use the phone to call for help earlier. He's furious, shouting that they could have been rescued instead of wandering through the woods. Kyohei doesn't even bother to look back, dismissively asking if they really had time to stand around explaining things. A large white van suddenly pulls up, its engine idling as the headlights cut through the trees. He turned around and told the other 2 to get in the car quickly. The other survivor is overcome with relief, believing they've finally reached a safe rescue vehicle. They quickly scramble into the back of the van, hoping their ordeal is finally at an end. In the rearview mirror, the driver's eye glows with a strange and unsettling light. The man in the teal jacket suddenly feels a surge of suspicion, asking about the driver and the car. Before he can finish his question, Kyohei grabs him roughly by the collar, his strength far beyond human. With a single motion, Kyohei slams the man down into the seat, effectively silencing him. Kyohei steps into the van and slides the door shut, coldly telling the driver to start moving. The survivors trapped inside are paralyzed with fear, finally realizing they've fallen into a deadly trap. Without bothering to answer, Kyohei brought his hand to his head as a trail of pitch-black, blood-soaked distortion began to spread across his face. He looks back with a chilling and monstrous smile, declaring that no further explanation is needed. A sign on the wall clearly identifies the room as the headquarters main conference room. Inside, a high-level briefing is underway as Public Safety Bureau officials review the aftermath of the recent operation. Chief Aikta, the commander who led the mission, gestures toward the documents scattered across the long table. He begins the presentation by highlighting the most dangerous specimens they encountered, starting with the mimic. The official report on specimen 23BD53, Kyohei Kinoshita, details his terrifyingly perfect human disguise and high intelligence. It further explains that Kinoshita is far stronger than average mutants and can transform his limbs into lethal, whip-like weapons. The file also lists other identified threats, including specimens like Minato Kyujo and Keita Kurosawa, who have similar traits. The section chief, a stern older man, looks up from the files and asks if there are truly no physical markers to distinguish them. Chief Aikta admits that their only way to identify these mimics currently is by carefully observing their speech and behavior. The section chief notes that this is a critical flaw, as any failure to detect an actor could lead to a massive disaster. A researcher in a white shirt and tie explains that while the lab is conducting various tests, physical differences remain elusive. He proposes a new method, identifying these mutants by the specific brain wave spikes that occur when they look at humans. However, he notes that this is the same pattern seen in other mutants and carries a significant practical hurdle. Since the test requires the subject to be captured alive for laboratory analysis, it's almost impossible to use during active combat. Chief Aikta argues that utilizing Agent Amaga's unique tracking abilities is currently their most efficient solution. He points out that Hayato Amaga's combat prowess and sensory skills make him an invaluable asset for the Bureau. The section chief turns to his subordinates, ordering them to proceed with extreme caution to avoid falling into more traps. The room falls silent as the section chief stares intently at the report, his expression growing more suspicious by the second. He voices a dangerous question, asking if the Bureau is absolutely certain that Agent Amagi himself isn't a mutant. The researcher quickly clarifies that they have already run brain wave tests on Hayato to confirm his human status. Despite the tests, he admits that Agent Amaga's physical evolution remains a complete and unexplained anomaly. Moving on, Chief Aikta begins to describe the second major mutant they encountered, a beast capable of sophisticated communication. Just another quiet day at the local convenience store. Hayato Amagi is inside, picking out some instant ramen for a quick meal. Suddenly, someone calls out to him from behind, calling him a rookie. It's Mayu Kawamoto, a friendly senior from the Public Safety Bureau. She's surprised to see him out of the hospital already. He recognizes her as a member of Division 1, and she's happy he actually knows who she is. She takes one look at the ramen and tells him he needs to eat something way healthier than that. Since she's off duty, she suggests they go grab some real food together. Hayato is caught completely off guard by the sudden invitation. They head out into the bustling shopping district. The two walk side by side as they look around for a place to eat. Mayu asks if he's in the mood for some pizza. He agrees, but then something occurs to him. He starts to say something but trails off, making her curious. He points out that pizza isn't exactly healthy food either, which only makes her more persistent. She insists it's way better than ramen, and he can only apologize for questioning her. She tells him he'll have to report all his meals to her from now on. As they talk, a man in a black suit walks past. Hayato's expression shifts instantly as his instincts kick in. He stops and looks back into the crowd, scanning the people passing by. Mayu notices his change in mood and asks if he saw someone he knows. He stays silent, focused on a suspicious figure moving through the crowd. He suddenly asks Mayu to follow him right away. He grabs her hand and starts pulling her along through the street. His grip is firm as he moves with purpose. Mayu is left completely confused as their pizza plans are suddenly abandoned for a chase. Hayato and Mayu were hot on the trail, weaving through the busy afternoon crowd. They kept their distance, watching the three men in suits slip into a narrow side street. Hayato asked if one of them was a mutant, but Mayu wasn't ready to call it yet. She wanted to wait for backup. The targets didn't seem to notice them, as they stood together at the end of the alley. Suddenly, the trio came to a dead stop. They turned around slowly, their faces cold and suspicious. Hayato and Mayu froze, realizing they'd been spotted. The lead guy, Masya Anzai, asked if they were with X-Nest, sounding more annoyed than anything. His two companions stayed silent, watching the officers with hollow eyes. Hayato had no idea what X-Nest was, and his confused expression probably didn't help. Masya wasn't buying it, accusing them of playing dumb while they plotted something. Mayu cut through the tension, identifying them as Public Safety Bureau officers and asking for cooperation. Masya went quiet, his eyes searching theirs for any sign of a bluff. He didn't look scared. If anything, he looked like he was calculating his next move. A bead of sweat rolled down his face as the silence stretched on. One of the other guys stepped forward, trying to buy some time. The three of them leaned in, whispering urgently while keeping an eye on the officers. They were worried about attracting too much attention if things got messy right there. They looked at Hayato, wondering if his cover was already blown. One of them suspected he'd either joined the Bureau or was being used by them. From across the alley, Hayato and Mayu watched the huddle. They couldn't hear a word over the distant city noise, but the vibe was definitely shifting. The mutants decided right then that they couldn't trust anyone working with the Bureau. For them, the choice was simple. They had to stay away from the PSB. Masya didn't see any point in sticking around for a fight they didn't need. Meanwhile, Mayu's device buzzed. She finally got the data she'd sent for earlier. The screen showed the IDs of all three men, Masya Anzai, Tetsu Fukami, and Jun Sita. Every single one of them was officially listed as a missing person. Masya started a calm countdown, his voice steady despite the situation. On 3, he barked an order to run, and the trio bolted like they'd been shot out of a cannon. Hayato didn't hesitate, shouting to Mayu as he took off after them. The chase was on, with the officers trailing the suits through the winding backstreets. One of the guys was fast, pushing himself to the limit to put some distance between them. He glanced back, teeth grit as he realized the silver-haired kid was gaining ground. Hayato lunged forward with a burst of speed, closing the gap in a single leap. He slammed into the runner, taking him down hard. They tumbled across the pavement, skidding to a stop in a cloud of dust. The other two stopped and looked back, Masya looking absolutely livid. Hayato pinned the guy down, his hand locked around his throat. The mutant struggled under him, gasping for air as he tried to break the hold. Hayato yelled for everyone to stay put, thinking he finally had things under control. But Masya wasn't done. He whipped around and caught Hayato right in the face with a brutal high kick. Hayato's head snapped back as blood sprayed from his nose, the force of the kick nearly taking him off his feet. Masya didn't even look winded, his eyes cold as he stared down at the kid who dared to touch him. The impact sent Hayato sailing through the air like a ragdoll. He hit the pavement hard, his drill arm carving a deep groove into the concrete as he skidded to a halt. Gasping for air, he tried to push himself up, but his limbs felt like lead. Masya slowly shrugged off his suit jacket, calling Hayato a traitor and promising to knock some sense into him. Rage flared in Hayato's eyes as he roared, throwing himself back into the fray with everything he had left. He lunged with the drill, but Masya caught the rotating weapon barehanded, the friction throwing off a shower of sparks. Hayato grit his teeth, refusing to back down even as his vision started to blur. A second later, a heavy fist connected with his face, sending another spray of blood across the street. He was sent tumbling backward again, the gap in power between them becoming painfully clear. Masya stood tall, looking more like an executioner than a man in a suit. Hayato collapsed to his knees, his body trembling as he struggled to maintain his form. Desperate, he pushed his energy into his right arm, the drill spinning with a high-pitched whine as he prepared a final strike. Masya braced himself, his expression unchanged as the lethal spiral came toward him. The two clashed in a violent explosion of force, the sheer pressure cracking the ground beneath them. The bioorganic drill pushed forward, straining against the mutant's inhuman strength. It grazed Masya's neck, drawing a thin line of dark blood, but it wasn't enough to stop him. Masya countered instantly, driving a knee deep into Hayato's gut. The air left Hayato's lungs in a pained wheeze as he was lifted off the ground. With a grunt of effort, Masya slammed him face first into the concrete with crushing force. The impact was so intense it sent a shockwave through the area, shattering windows nearby. Hayato lay broken in the crater, his face a mess of blood and dust as his consciousness wavered. Masya loomed over him, his shadow swallowing the fallen boy. His two associates stepped out of the shadows, claiming they just wanted to live in peace without being hunted. Masya pinned Hayato's head down with one hand, demanding to be left alone as if he were the victim. Suddenly, a beam of energy tore through the air, striking Masya squarely in the forehead. He reeled back, clutching his face as blood poured from the fresh wound. Tetsu and Jun gasped in horror, completely blindsided by the sudden intervention. Far down the street, a lone figure stood ready, her arm extended toward them. It was Mayu. Her fingertips were still smoking from the blast she'd just unleashed. She was breathing heavily, the strain of the high-output shot visible on her face. The other two mutants turned their attention toward her, their expressions twisting into pure hatred. But before they could move, a volley of shots rained down, forcing them to scramble for cover. Mayu shouted for Hayato to get up and get over to her while they had the chance. Hayato looked up, his predatory teeth bared as he forced his battered body to respond. Behind them, Masya let out a low, guttural growl as the hole in his head began to knit itself back together. His arms started to shift and harden, manifesting a massive gray metallic shield as he declared that everyone there was going to die. Just as things looked hopeless, a voice called out, ordering everyone to stop immediately. A man stood firm, his presence enough to make even the mutants hesitate. It was team leader Kazuma and his reinforcements, stepping into the light with weapons drawn. Masya just smirked, taunting them to try their luck as more agents started to swarm the area. Nakata moved with calculated precision, his boots barely touching the ground as he closed the distance. He delivered a powerful roundhouse kick, but Masya reacted instantly, bracing himself for the impact. Masya's arm shifted into a thick biological shield, absorbing the force of the blow with a heavy thud. The shockwave sent him skidding across the pavement, his boots carving deep furrows into the concrete before he slammed into a nearby building. "You bastard!" Masya roared, his face contorting with a mix of pain and pure, unadulterated fury. He retaliated with a blindingly fast swing of his arm, which had morphed into a jagged, lethal blade. Nakata barely managed to duck under the arc of the weapon, feeling the wind from the blade whistle past his head. Nearby, Junsita gripped his tactical baton, his eyes darting around as he warned the gathered citizens to stay back for their own safety. Tetsu Fukami watched the escalating violence with a grim expression, knowing that the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Kazuma didn't give his opponent a moment to breathe, drawing his sidearm and unleashing a steady stream of fire. Bullets tore into Tetsu Fukami's shoulder and chest, the impact jerking his body back as blood sprayed against the red-hued sky. Blood ran down Tetsu Fukami's face, but he just smirked through the pain, his eyes glowing with a dangerous, unstable light. "Hayato, stand back," Mayu commanded, but the boy, despite his injuries, bared his teeth and insisted he was going to fight too. Tetsu Fukami tore off the remnants of his suit jacket, his right arm fully transforming into a massive, glistening bone-like blade. Kazuma didn't let up, his finger pulling the trigger again and again as he tried to keep the monster at bay. With a blur of motion, Tetsu Fukami dropped low, the bullets whistling harmlessly overhead as he surged forward. The blade arm whistled through the air, aimed straight for Kazuma's throat in a killing stroke. Kazuma raised his left hand, his specialized red glove sparking as it met the edge of the biological weapon. Seizing the opening, he delivered a powerful, explosive punch squarely to Tetsu Fukami's jaw, sending a spray of blood into the air. He followed up with a brutal downward strike, intent on ending the fight then and there. Tetsu Fukami's head snapped back, a guttural sound of pain escaping his throat as he struggled to maintain his balance. Before he could recover, Kazuma delivered a crushing kick to his midsection, forcing the air from his lungs. But Tetsu Fukami was relentless. Even as he stumbled, he swung his blade in a wide arc, catching Kazuma across the shoulder. The impact sent Kazuma's handgun clattering across the uneven pavement, out of his immediate reach. "Damn it," Kazuma hissed, his hand instinctively going to the deep gash on his shoulder as he scrambled to recover. Tetsu Fukami loomed over him, the blade arm held high, ready to deliver a final, decisive blow. Thinking fast, Kazuma lunged forward and caught the blade with both hands, his mechanical gloves grinding against the sharp edge. Blood sprayed from the friction, but Kazuma held on, his teeth grit as he fought to keep the weapon from his neck. Tetsu Fukami's expression was one of cold, murderous intent as he applied more pressure, determined to crush his opponent. He let out a sharp tusk, annoyed by the persistent resistance of the human agents. "Kazuma, I'll back you up," Mayu shouted, her fingers glowing as she prepared to unleash another energy blast. Tetsu Fukami turned his bloodied gaze toward her, his voice a low growl as he told them they were all becoming a nuisance. Kazuma shouted her name in warning, sensing the danger she was putting herself in. A rapid succession of energy beams shot from Mayu's fingertips, lighting up the dim alleyway with bursts of white light. Tetsu Fukami raised his blade arm to shield his face, the energy pulses dissipating against the hardened biological matter. He began to close the distance, ignoring the barrage of fire as he focused entirely on the girl. Mayu's breath hitched as the monster suddenly appeared directly in front of her, the blade arm already in motion. The weapon descended in a lethal arc, but a silver blur intercepted it at the last possible second. Hayato tackled Mayu out of the way, the two of them hitting the ground hard as the blade sliced through the air where they had been standing. "Stay out of this if you value your lives," Tetsu Fukami barked, his eyes burning with a terrifying, inhuman light. Hayato pushed himself up, his chest heaving as he stared back at the man who had once been a colleague. Tetsu Fukami didn't hesitate, swinging both of his transformed arms down in a dual-bladed strike that threatened to end it all. Hayato lunged forward, pouring every ounce of his remaining strength into a desperate punch that caught Tetsu Fukami right in the chest. Tetsu Fukami roared in fury, his massive blade arm sweeping through the air in a lethal arc that Hayato barely managed to avoid. Not letting up, Hayato's drill arm whirred to life, the bioorganic weapon driving deep into his opponent's shoulder. Blood sprayed across the pavement as Tetsu Fukami staggered back, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and agonizing pain. Hayato stood his ground, his chest heaving as he struggled to draw breath, his body battered and bloodied from the intense exchange. Tetsu Fukami stared at him, his own breathing ragged, the toll of the battle finally beginning to show on his face. Realizing that dragging this out for so long didn't look good, Tetsu Fukami turned to make a run for it. On the other side, a powerful kick slammed into Masia's shield arm, the force of the impact vibrating through the air. Jun Sita immediately lunged forward to attack Nakata, trying to relieve the pressure on his teammate. But he was countered by Nakata with a knee strike that left him dazed. Masia grunted, twisting his body to deliver a heavy-handed punch that caught Nakata squarely in the ribs. The blow sent Nakata reeling back, the sheer power of the mutant's strike nearly knocking the wind out of him. Nakata winced, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth as he struggled to stay on his feet. He collapsed to one knee, a violent cough racking his body as he spat out a mouthful of dark crimson. "You're quite resilient. You're doing pretty well for a human," Masia taunted, his voice dripping with condescension. Nakata looked up, his gaze fierce and unwavering. "I won't fall until I kill you. Aren't you the one at your limit?" Masia's expression darkened. "Is that how it looks to you? How delusional," he spat back. He suddenly paused, his head snapping toward a distant sound as if sensing a new threat approaching. Nearby, Jun looked toward the source of the commotion, his brow furrowed with concern. "You can handle this alone, right? I'll go check things out," Masia said, his voice grim as he turned toward the new disturbance. "Wait," Nakata shouted, his hand outstretched as if to stop Masya from making a desperate move. But it was too late. Junsita had already lunged forward, intercepting him with a brutal swing. Jun stepped into his path, his expression cold and determined. "I'm your opponent," he declared. The air went cold as Tetsu grabbed a terrified child from the crowd, holding a blade to the boy's throat. "Everyone get back!" he screamed, using the innocent life as a final, desperate shield. Tetsu holds a blade to a civilian's throat, barking out a final warning for the agents to back off. Kazuma keeps his pistol trained on the threat, while updating Hayato and Mayu on the hostage situation and the team leader's absence. Mayu steps forward, taking aim as she prepares a precise counterattack to rescue the citizen. A sudden strike connects with Tetsu, snapping his head back and forcing him to release his grip on the captive. Bloodied but far from finished, the mutant lets out a manic laugh and swears he's going to kill them all. Hayato doesn't hesitate, lunging into the fray with his drill arm spinning at full velocity. Masya Anzai stood firm in the middle of the plaza, his weaponized arm stiffening as he watched his comrades go down. He stares ahead, his face a mess of bruises and blood from the ongoing battle. His expression turns cold as he prepares to drop his human facade entirely. The monster's eyes glow a predatory crimson, signaling that his true power has finally been unleashed.